The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay. Okay. Good morning, everybody. And on behalf of Killarney Chamber of Tourism and Commerce, welcome to our fourth in a series of webinars designed to try and help you deal with the current crisis. Today's webinar is entitled Preparing for the New Normal, Reimagining a New Sales Landscape and Preparing Now for the Future. Our presenters today are Helen O'Leary and Una Cremens from the Innovate Room. Please feel free to use the question box if there is anything you would like to ask Helen or Una, and my colleague Niall will facilitate a Q&A at the end of the presentation. Following the Q&A and around approximately 12 p.m, we will be joined by Sarah Tracy from O'Connor, Kelleher and Tracy, Chartered Accountants and Auditors, who will be taking us through the process for creating your own business plan. As usual, both presentations will be recorded and will be later available to download on the Chamber website killarney.ie/resources. So, without further ado, I will pass you over to Helen and Una from the Innovate Room. Una first, from the Innovate Room Consultant.
Yeah,
Thank you, girls. Over to you.
Okay, great. Okay. And sorry about that. And thank you. So, can everybody see my screen?
Not yet.
Not yet.
There we go.
There we go.
Now we're in business.
Okay, great. Okay, brilliant. Super. So good morning, everybody. And my name is Una Cremens, and I'm delighted to be co-presenting with my colleague Helen today on this topic of looking at the future and looking at our sales and marketing landscape, and of course, ultimately looking at that space of revenue and pricing as well. Thank you to Paul and to Nia for reaching out and inviting us. We're delighted to be speaking to Kerry Chamber today. We know we have lots of friends in Kerry, and it certainly seems too long since we were in the Kingdom. We're certainly been planning road trips, and will be planning one when this crisis is over. I suppose one of the things when we were preparing for today is just one of the things that has really struck us was this adage which we found was that in the struggle for survival, the fittest win out at the expense of their rivals because they succeed in adapting themselves best to their environment. And I suppose never before have we been challenged just so much to adapt and to change and to reinvent ourselves and to reinvent possibly our processes and our ways of doing business as we have today. I suppose our world of the past has really had many fixed parameters, but you know, as we go forward, I think we're in uncertain territory, and certainly for a long period of time, it's going to be uncertain. And to accommodate that, we're going to have to really be adaptive ourselves and to be willing to accept change and modifications in all our processes as we go. What do we know for certain in these uncertain times? And I suppose we've really kind of shaped today's webinar around the hospitality sector. And we know that in the hospitality sector, really the effect of the crisis has been felt right across the ecosystem of hospitality, encompassing travel, airlines, hotels, Airbnb, car hire, ferries, and the huge accommodation sector that we have. It has been all, you know, it has shattered the worlds of all of those and how they do business. The historical and traditional data that we've spent so much time accumulating and bearing and using to inform our business strategies now comes from a travel and tourism world that no longer exists. Reality is that limited demand now exists for our hospitality product currently, and that's something that we're going to have to get used to for a period of time, especially as we are just in kind of the initial phases of recovery, and certainly entering into that from July onwards. I suppose one of the things that we're hearing a lot about lately is we are unsure of how recovery will happen. And we hear a lot of talk about U-shaped graphs and V-shaped graphs. And I suppose I just want to explain, and the little matrix at the bottom right of this screen kind of talks about this, in that if you imagine the letter V, then, we've had a very steep decline. The coronavirus hit, and within a matter of days, lots of the hospitality sector was actually just closed down and shut down. So we had a very steep decline into the crisis. And there was a hope for a while that we would have a very fast recovery, so we would come up the other side of the V quickly. I think what we've all learned, and certainly what we're hearing from economists and from general business forecasters is, yes, we've had the steep decline, but we're going to follow more a U-shaped recovery. So we're going to have a long recovery period, and it's going to be timelined across initial recovery, and then when it actually starts to strengthen that bit more. So I suppose I would, just in that context today, to all of you on the call, just to understand that the timeline has actually probably extended from what we first anticipated, and now looks like it's definitely going to go into a 24-month period in terms of recovery. So just to bear that in mind. What is good is that we have certainty on opening dates for our hotels and some of our, our hospitalities, our cafes, our restaurants, etc., even though there's lots still to be sorted. And I understand that from an operational point of view. What we don't know is, I suppose, and just, again, just talking about that decline as such, how will the recovery happen? So, we now, as I say, anticipate it's going to be a longer recovery. One of the questions is, will leisure travel recover faster than business travel? And that's really because, I suppose, even today, here we are talking to you in Kerry using technology that 3 months ago we wouldn't have thought about using possibly. There's lots of use of collaboration tools that are really allowing business to continue even though this crisis and pandemic is in place. But we know the corporate world is very effective at reducing budgets, at implementing travel bans, at cancelling events. So I think there's certainly an assumption in the market at the moment that the leisure travel will recover faster than business travel. We need to, I suppose, try to understand what's the effect long-term and short-term on conference and event business, because I know many of you on the call have lots of event space and conference space within your properties, and within wider Kerry is a great convention centre, etc. So how is this, what effect will be on that business for the future? Obviously, we have still lots of uncertainty about how operations will recover, and that's a work in progress. And I know that lots of the bodies involved in hospitality are working very hard to come up with some standards around that. Staycations, seem to be a focus, that these will become more popular. And Helen shared a lovely term with me this morning when we were doing some prep for this webinar around drive-to business that can actually drive to your hotel or to your bed and breakfast, or to your hostel. That will become important business because it's very accessible for people. We need to take account as well of lower consumer confidence. Will that make people more reluctant to travel? And to what extent will safety concerns make people reluctant to travel? And Helen will talk you through that in a little bit more detail, because we believe that that's going to be a very strong influencing factor on people's decision to purchase within the hospitality sector. The future, when we kind of narrow it down, I suppose, a little bit towards revenue management, and many of you know that we do a lot of work in this space, and revenue management, I suppose, is really about, how the commercial space of your business. And what we're seeing here when we did some research on this is that there's really going to be a fundamental shift in how we manage revenue for any business. And actually that business, because you all budget for your business, whether you're a restaurant, a hotel, or a bed and breakfast, you all have budgets and targets that you're trying to achieve. I think in the past, we have used probably a narrow data set to inform how we might do. And what's becoming evident now is that we need to develop a broader perspective and really look to macro environment for the influence that they can bring to bear on our business, because we know from this pandemic that the macro environment has a huge influence on our business and on our economies. You'll be delighted to hear that I'm probably going to tell anybody out there who has a budget for their business that you really can probably tear it up because we're in a new situation. And to use probably an overworked phrase, we're in unprecedented times. So really that budget is reflecting the past and it's reflecting the historic trading. But we're really coming into a new space where that really doesn't hold much traction. Instead, what we need to do as an industry is we need to start working to deliver real-time kind of forecasting about how our business might perform over the next, 3, 6, 9, 12 months. And to do that, I'm asking you to consider inverting how you do your business and how you forecast, that instead you're going to move to a model of bottom-up forecasting. So before we come to that, I suppose I want to paint the picture that there are positive shoots out there. And this is evidenced this week. There's a great report free of charge available on the Ideas website from RateGain about pickup trends in various locations. And, in this larger diagram that you see here, they're looking at week 7 and week 8. And actually the destinations that are showing positive pickup have actually doubled week on week versus the previous week. So in the week of April 12th to 18th, there was actually 16 destinations internationally that are showing positive pickup trends versus the previous week, which had only 8. So what we can determine from that in Ireland and in Killarney and in the broader Kerry County is that, that these are markets that are starting to open up. So we can expect that we will get a level of recovery as well. And, we need to be attuned to that level of recovery and to start to monitor it possibly more forensically than we've ever managed demand forecasting before. So we're really switching to looking from a historical perspective to switching to look to a much more future perspective. In the world of supply and demand in hospitality, there's lots of supply to the market in Killarney town and in the broader Kerry County. And you've enjoyed great times in the past where the demand has been equal to your supply. So you've commanded nice prices and you've commanded nice business levels and you've been able to exercise some choice maybe over the type of business that you've taken. That balance has really been skewed in the past while. And through this crisis. And what you'll find now is that, yes, you as suppliers on the call, you've lost the supply, but actually our demand is so weak in the market that really there's very little power. You have very little power as suppliers to the market. So and that's really setting, it's going to take a period of time to rebalance that equation and to get supply and demand back to an equal place. To do that is going to create, is a process in itself about how to bring that demand back to an equal balance with your supply in the market. So, we used to do all this budgeting. We probably talked about year-on-year growth. We talked about, maybe sometimes some of us were in businesses that were just challenged to make a certain profit line, or maybe you were just given a figure to meet in terms of expectation of sales, or perhaps you were asked to, just put 5% on or 8% or whatever it might have been. And some of you would have done very detailed work around your budgets and your forecasts, but a lot of it was probably what we call top-down forecasting, and top-down forecasting or top-down budgeting. And I suppose the change now is that we're recommending, or certainly the current kind of research, and this really, a lot of this kind of talk in the forecasting space has really come from a lot of research from the Boston Consulting Group, is that we should really be looking at bottom-up forecasting. And that will make us, and get rid of top-down, because and I'm going to talk you through what we mean by bottom-up forecasting, but it will make us more in tune with the market demand possibly as it comes back, and it would allow us to do real-time forecasting. So really the model of bottom-up forecasting is three-layered or three-stepped approach. One is that you really look and refine and define your product and your services that are available. So whether you're a restaurant, a hotel, a bed and breakfast, you're really looking at, you know, what is the product and what is the service offering. And I know Helen's going to talk to you in a little bit more in detail on that level during her presentation. The second level, or the second step that we need to take, is how can we identify what the potential volume and the prices that you might achieve or that you might sell your product at is really step two. And that's really where, you know, this process around revenue management and forecasting really is a step change for us. And I will talk you through that in detail. Putting those two steps together, step one and step two, will give you a good, strong revenue kind of outlook for your business, and will allow you to see things through a more realistic lens, maybe than you've had or that you have available to you at the moment. So the data inputs, what we're really saying is that your data inputs, we worked on very traditional, and many of you who know us know that in the space of revenue management, we've worked off set metrics and set inputs to create forecasts, etc. What the current environment has educated us or forced us to do is that we broaden hugely the data inputs that we need to actually help us to best inform what our potential volume sales might be and what the price might be at. So regulatory and legislative inputs is very important now, because that's our guiding kind of, it's our cornerstone of how we're doing business. Because are we allowed to do business? Is there change in legislation? Will the 2 meters become 1 meter, etc.? So that's really, really important that's taken account of. And I know that you know that. Airlines and accessibility to the country is going to be really important for us to keep track of. Particularly, I know you have your own local airport in Kerry, but also through Shannon, Cork and Dublin, what flights are going to continue service and to what ability, and to continue to get the updates on those. And as the market comes back, as the flights get reinstated, is really the important part. The feeder markets that are active, because obviously you can see from that rate gain slide, there's 16 markets that are showing positive pickup. So we don't know in detail if that's domestic pickup or international pickup. We can imagine it's probably domestic at the moment. But in turn, that market will become, they will start to travel outward as well. So it will be important to keep an eye on the international markets and their willingness to travel internationally as time goes on and as our recovery strengthens. Your market competitors, well, you know, there's lots of competitors in the hospitality space. It's a big industry in Ireland. So, you know, you have market competitors via destination and then within your local environment. Some it might be within the accommodation sector broadly. Others might be like for like competitors. So it's important, you know, that you work together, obviously as a destination, but also that you're cognizant of, you know, performance in those spaces. And then that will lead you to be able to do, you know, when you're looking at pricing, to best inform how you should price your product for the market going forward. So how can you get these data sources? I suppose just, you know, you can look at your data analytics, very important, and I'll show you in a moment. I've some information on that. Social media engagement and information, never more important to kind of try and read that for level of engagement, level of sentiment on those channels, those social channels, to take account of look to book ratios. Consumer sentiment surveys. Fulge Ireland have recently conducted one, and that's freely available. And again, it's worthwhile examining that and what are people's, you know, what is their sentiment towards travel, particularly in the domestic environment. Legislative or regulatory updates, as we said. And then I suppose the one here we haven't mentioned before is the trade information. It's really important to keep in touch with your suppliers. You're obviously suppliers to hospitality, but to your suppliers, because they might sometimes in that chain of supply, they'll be the first to see the green shoots, and important to kind of keep in touch with them and to understand where things might be happening. And I suppose just the other point from this slide is really to start to track data by market and by segment, because how every market will return and will recover will differ very much by region and by customer segment. So, you know, when the US market might return to come back and to travel into Ireland is going to be, it's going to be very different maybe to how the UK market, and both of those actually as kind of volatile markets as they are in this pandemic, it's going to rely a lot on legislative and regulatory framework there, and in terms of access as well, just around those markets. So very important that we broaden our perspective on that when we're talking about it. I suppose one of the things that was really heartening is that, I don't know if many of you saw this, was there was a great post by quite a few providers, but I just picked up Frank's one from Avio. After the announcement on Friday night, there was a 370% increase in bookings through their booking engine for Irish domestic hotel bookings for July and August this year. So I suppose that's the type of data that, you know, as providers, you know, gives us great hope for the business, and also tells us that, as Frank points out, the appetite to travel has not diminished. So people are looking to travel once they have that permission and that regulatory framework that allows them to do that. And then, you know, we just, as I say, need to keep an eye on what Michael O'Leary, obviously, who delivers many tourists to our country, just in terms of when he's bringing back flights online, you know, and at what level, especially throughout, I suppose, the further regions of 2020 into our winter period, and obviously keeping updated on government updates. So suggested kind of actions that you can take, and I won't read through all of this, but you obviously, you know, the slides will stay will be on the recording, is to stay flexible as initial demand returns. And this is really important that, you know, consumers, and this has been kind of, I've put this in apostrophes because it's common across many pieces of research at the moment, that, you know, consumers want flexible cancellation policies, because selling too hard at the moment could actually damage the brand. And I think you've all been aware of that, and you've been very mindful of that during this period. There's been wonderful social media engagement in a gorgeous way from many of the hotels, particularly in Kerry, but right across the country as well. And I think you're aware that it's all relationship led. And again, Helen will talk to you in detail about that. I suppose that it's important that whatever data you collect, you know, when you're talking about pricing or preparing for the new future, the data can help you make decisions. So it's kind of what's the applied learning from that data. Just make sure to challenge yourself on that. You know, if we're collecting this, what can that tell us about maybe, you know, the mainland Europe market for next year, or the domestic market for this summer, or what can we do? You know, just some other things, track and contact all postponed business and work to reschedule and reconfirm, you know, but that's for when you've reopened and when you have a greater sense of where you're at. Define new KPIs and metrics for your hotel or business. And I think that's going to be really important. I think things like customer sentiment, I think your social media channel engagement levels, your data analytics, I mean, for years we've talked about really tracking nationalities through all our channels. I think that's never going to be more important than in the next few months, as you try to project forward what way your business is going to take shape and how demand is going to grow for your business. And absolutely, you know, sharing the information is crucial as well, making sure that everyone in the team is aware. And as a destination, I'd encourage you to share as well, because, you know, a rising tide lifts all boats. So, you know, obviously it's about saying, well, we're, you know, maybe holding regular update meetings that aren't anti-competitive in any way, but, you know, but will help everybody to improve their performance and to recover in this market. I didn't think it would be good if we left this webinar with talking a little bit about pricing to you. So I suppose one of the things that, you know, it's always a challenge that when you have a challenged market that we might consider to drop pricing or to reduce our price offering in the face of such demand challenges. But, there was an extensive study done by Kathy Ent, who's a renowned professor in Cornell University in 2009, post the last financial crisis that we had. And in a survey of 67,000 hotels, what they found was that, when you price below those of a direct competitor, if you price below that in an effort to maintain market share, it can have very negative consequences, not alone on your property, but on the market as a whole. So the results found that the best way to have revenue performance better than your competitors is to have higher average rates, which in turn will lead to higher RevPAR. And I know this is quite hotel specific. But important to remember that, we would often say that demand is elastic as such. We often use that term, will demand react to price? Bear in mind that until we're back to a very strong recovery position, you may find that actually demand is quite inelastic at the moment. And if you drop rate, all you're doing is actually diluting the price that you could achieve for your product. And that probably actually holds for restaurants as well, and anybody who's thinking of pricing a product in the market. We would say to you that discounting is a short-term strategy, and there really are no winners if you pursue that policy as such. And we would ask everyone to kind of really be as level-headed as possible here, because the industry you've invested hugely in the industry, as has everybody in hospitality right across the country, but it's important to protect the product and the value offering that you have. Many of you have seen these slides before, but I just thought it'd be helpful just to reiterate them again. In terms of a price-value relationship, and this holds for any product and any supplier who's on the call, if you look at this, we have price and we have value. And the ideal relationship that as your price grows, your value grows, so that they're totally parallel relationships. And that's the ideal relationship for your consumer to enjoy and for you as a business. If you have very high value and you have low price, you may be underpriced. And then we know that if you have too high a price and low value, then you could be too expensive for the consumer. But what we want to avoid here is a downward spiral. Okay, so using this example, we have a price set here at the where you're sitting at the top of the arrow there, and a competitor comes in and perhaps price is lower than you. Then what can happen here is that your reaction could be that you are going to drop price here. And really, that means that, the value, that really what the opportunity now is that the competitor might come back in and price lower again. So suddenly we're on that downward spiral that, we've all been familiar with in the past. And we would just urge you to really step back from that process, and instead to focus instead of knowing what the foundation of your price is. Where is the value? What's the unique value add that you can add as a business, whether that's as a restaurant, whether that's as a hotel, a bed and breakfast? What's the value add that you can differentiate yourself, so that in turn it'll allow you to price very effectively for the demand as it comes back into the market. So other things that you can do is obviously, focusing on that is creating innovative added value package that leverage your hotel's safety policy, which is going to be key and which Helen's going to talk to you in detail about, location and activities. Diversifying product and value, that first step in this bottom-up forecasting, really looking at your products and services and saying how aligned are they to the needs as they're emerging of our customers in the market. Continuing to market to loyal or repeat guests. And then the one thing is just on channel management, I suppose it's important to understand, as you see certain markets perform and start to come back or start to show signs of recovery, that you're focusing on the channels that are relevant for those markets. So for instance, if we see the US market is coming back, then obviously GDS is very important for that market, for a lot of hotels that might be on this call or accommodation providers. So important that gets enough scrutiny. And also, I suppose prior to this, crisis, many of you would have had very strict inventory controls on those channels, and just urging you to make sure that you have reviewed all of those in line with the market and the demand as it currently is today. So that's my sharing with you this morning. I'd be happy to take questions at the end, but for the moment, my colleague Helen is going to take over now and talk you through you know, about how to diversify product and how to really meet consumer needs as demand comes back into the market. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Una. I think Paul's going to give me control of the screen in a second. Just waiting for that.
Okay, and maybe.
So maybe if you can you stop sharing?
Okay,
and then maybe...
there you go. Okay, yeah. So I'll stop. I'll come out of this now. Let me just see how I managed to do that, Helen. Let me.
Here we go. Yes, here we go.
Yeah.
So,
okay, great. Okay.
So thank you.
Okay.
I hope you'll be able to see my screen now. Just bear with me, and as we go. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we should be good, Helen.
Great, thank you. Don't we love the, oh, disappeared off me. There we go.
Yeah.
So, and hopefully that's on full screen now for everyone.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, well done.
Great stuff. Oh, sorry. Good morning. I'm so sorry. I'm not normally so clunky with technology. So good morning, everyone. And Una, thanks so much for setting up such a nice intro to the sales element of today's chat. And really, just to reiterate, I suppose we're so delighted to be talking to you. We understand wholly the environment, the challenging environment that you're all working in. So we really approach today, and certainly the next set of slides, while we're conscious that we're talking within the hospitality space, we know that we may have other people on the call as well, be they from visitor attractions or from activity providers or restaurants, or there may even be retail. So what I wanted to sort of say is that certainly, as with Una's slides, the coming up slides really can be applied to any business, and really can be taken on board in that way. So some key considerations, as we said, you know, it really is about embracing a new approach to business. And really what I want to focus on today is being on target with communication. So all of the work that you're going to do in terms of product development and customer development, really when you're talking to your customers is going to be the key element, and timing is going to be crucial in that piece. So in sales, the key challenges I see them are certainly around consumer confidence, and that's fiscal confidence, people having the money to spend and being willing to spend it. Really deeply around customer confidence, that is their health and safety, and how you can address that and make everyone who comes to visit your business feel that you're as obsessed with their health and their safety and their well-being as they are. So if you can do that, you are absolutely, and if you can communicate that, you are absolutely going to be approaching this in the right way. And finally, I'm going to be talking about how to reach our customers and what sort of messages you should be reaching them with. So there's a couple of things that we need to do to get to that. We need to understand the forecast of the cycle of recovery, and thankfully we have a roadmap now. And while we understand that is a fluid roadmap, it will help us certainly in forecasting that cycle. I think it's important that we think about who our customer is now, because it's not necessarily the customer of the past. We're hoping that some of those customers will stay with us, but there are going to be opportunities to get new business and different types of customers and different needs that we may not have, those customers with different needs, which we may have not had to consider or may not have considered in the past. We're absolutely, without a doubt, going to have to adapt our sales approach. And for those of you on the call who have proactive salespeople in your business, be it you might be yourself, you're going to also have to approach how you do that business and really adapt to generating leads in a different way. And then finally, we're going to talk about communicating, because really marketing and communication as an overall, marketing, PR, publicity, and the sales communication process and the conversion process has got to be really key, and that's where the winners will be. So, as I said, forecasting has taken on a whole new meaning, and the STR team actually did a piece on forecasting to return to business a few weeks ago. But really, I think you might have seen this if you were attending their webinar, but what I really think we need to do for our businesses is forecast by segment and product, because many of you may be able to open certain parts of your businesses, or you may only have a portion of your business available to be seen or be trade, I beg your pardon, to trade. So it's important to be looking by segment or by product about how you might be able to forecast. And bear in mind that this is going to change. It could change with the wind, as we know. So it's really important to have that flexible approach. So mapping that out would be the first step I would recommend for everyone, because by understanding what you can sell and when you can sell it, then you can put an approach in, a communications and planning. And even though we have this plan, we have this roadmap, we know that it's going to be a bit stop-go. It's going to be that W curve that Una spoke about earlier. We're going to be feeling our way through it. So what we do know is that in all of the scenarios, the people that we're planning, our customers that we're seeking out, that we're pursuing and we're engaging, it's changed utterly. So we need to actually change with that. And talking about that, it's really interesting to think about who's our customer now. And it's never been more important to keep our customers, our loyal customers, closer than ever. And our new customers to start really building relationships with them. And many of you, as Una said earlier, have been doing a great job with social media. I know I've certainly connected with businesses that I hadn't had previously before, and that's due to the fact that we are all spending also more time online and we're having time to discover. So there's really good opportunity, but it's all about reputation and relationship here. This is what our sales approach needs to be. And the wonderful thing about Kerry is that it has such an amazing reputation, and leveraging that will really help you going forward. For those of you who have been unfortunate enough to have to listen to me in the past, you may remember this slide, but really it has never been more true than it is now. It is so essential to put the customer at the absolute dead center of everything that you do. Una talked a lot about trends and about really understanding how to bring those trends, those customer trends, into your picture, and that's really essential, because what the customer is both buying behaviour and also the trends in sort of tourism and in hospitality. So it's important to bear that in mind. It's crucial to understand the needs. The needs of our customers now are not the same as their needs before the pandemic. So we really have to think in a different way, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. And finally, we have to match those needs to your value offering. And again, we'll talk about how we can do that, but they're going to be really the gold star areas to focus on from a sales perspective. But how do you do it? Well, Una already told you to rip up your budgets, so I'm going to tell you to rip up the rule book. We have to approach things differently. And so I suppose what I would be recommending is that you strategize over a number of different dimensions. And really that's about sort of scenario planning. Okay, your scenario planning, you're thinking about how things might appear over a number of different ways. I think it's important to look at multiple timescales based on what part of your business you may be able to open, or what reinvigorated product. You need to think about those segments that we talked about, whether they're leisure segments or corporate segments, whether they're local markets or international markets, whether they are domestic markets. They could be within your own 40 kilometers. And then it's really important to put on top of that the product that you're going to offer to each of those segments at what time. And finally, then think about your communication strategy, how you're going to communicate it, what is your message going to be, and how you're going to do that. And it may sound terribly convoluted, but it's really not. And I'll give you an example of how I've done this in the past. So in terms of strategizing across multiple dimensions, this is what I want you to think about. Map out, okay, who's your loyal customer now that you think you can communicate with, and who you think will come back to you. And then brainstorm with your partner, your colleagues, the dog if you want, but brainstorm about who your future customers are going to be. And there is a real, we can really see that there's a lift in certain industries. We've seen the winners. So it's really important to think about those industries and those players that would be your customer of the future. And that's both from a B2B perspective and also from a consumer perspective, a B2C perspective. Really be laser focused. Put your attention on where your best efforts are going to give you your best return. So really think about that. But don't think about it, do think long term in this. It's going to be a long term game, but really focus where you're going to get your best return most likely in this period. Really be imaginative. It's going to be essential, and you're really going to have to reinvent yourself. Finally, I suppose, don't just believe if we have an awful tendency in sales, and I can say this because I'm a salesperson, and to believe our own lies. And it's really important not to do that in this scenario. You're going to have to test the market. So, and I'll talk a little bit about how you can do that without it being overly convoluted. So, how do I scenario plan, or how could you scenario plan? It really start with a blank piece of paper. You can see what I'll be doing here. You put a big piece of paper down. You try and figure out what you're going to offer to what sort of customer at what time. It might end up looking a little bit prettier, like something like this at the end. Where you're talking about what your offering will be, who you're going to communicate with and how you're going to communicate them, and what product you're going to offer to each of those segments within what time scale. Do bear in mind that you're going to have to be, at this point, we are all hoping and praying that 2021 will see a return to a little bit more robust trading and certainly some more positivity. So do be thinking that far out as well. You may not be doing a whole lot of action on it, but it's important to really not forget it and to keep your eye on that ball. Finally, I suppose really we have to be obsessed by the question: what are your customers thinking, wondering, and worrying about? And if you can be obsessed by that question, I think it's a really key element. So in order to know that, you have to understand what their needs are. And really this, I'm not going to get into a lecture on Maslow, but this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, for those of you who may be familiar with it. And it starts down at the very bottom, where we all need the basics in life: physical, shelter, warmth. And then as we achieve that, we think about, okay, well, our safety, our security, our health. Once we have that secured, then we start thinking and looking for other things like love and belonging and friendship and family. And as we achieve that, then we're looking to do more for ourselves and our self-esteem and self-actualization, which is all about experiences and creativity and spontaneity and all of the good stuff. And that's normally where we, as in hospitality industry and in the experience industry, usually sell. We sell it at the top of this needs pyramid. But unfortunately, customers' needs are changing. So we now need to be selling on the lower echelons of that triangle and really thinking about what people's needs are there. And there's a great study was done by Bain and Company, and I'm just going to pop it up here, because what it does is it allows us to understand how we can match value to need. And as Una said, we are not advocates of price dropping, but we are advocates of showing value. Okay, and that value as just in your main product or a value add, both are important here. But what you might be thinking about is like your value that you will be offering now will probably be more in the functional and the emotional space, around the therapeutic value, around making life easy, reducing stress, around giving wellness opportunities and being fun. So although they might be some of the values that you may think about: high quality, reduction of risk, all of these, they're really important place to think about in terms of your customers' needs. So I suppose, how do we know that? How do we establish those needs? And I really encourage you to look both inward and outward for this. And what do I mean by that? Brainstorm on what those customers' needs are, as I said earlier. But maybe it's as simple as taking a bit of a poll. We're all on multiple WhatsApp groups with various people. I know I have more WhatsApp groups going than I ever thought was possible. But it can be possible to take a temperature read from those. Asking a group of friends, asking a group of colleagues, what do you think of this? What are the needs? And then also, you can certainly look inward and discuss it as a team, and then take that bigger view that Una was talking about, take that trade information that she was telling you about, take the international benchmarks that we're seeing. Hyatt had an interesting article today, and they're talking about putting a position of a hygiene manager in each of their businesses, right? And they already do it in Asia because they've been doing it there for years, but now they're talking about bringing it out, into their businesses. So by looking outwards and seeing what other people are doing, you can also get ideas about what your customers' needs might be. So once you have a good idea of what those needs are, you now have to adapt our sales approach. And you know, as salespeople and as Irish people, we're used to being very hands-on. And it's safe to say now that we need to be hands-off in terms of our sales. Physical space is going to be our one. So how do we do that? And I suppose really many of you will be familiar with this, which is the sort of the linear curve of sales, where you have a business development role, a sales role, and then reservations or the reactive team taking the booking and moving forward. But now we need to be far more dynamic, and we need to look at ourselves in a different way. We need to be spending time really valuable. We have to revalue the role. We have to reimagine and revalue how we would normally have looked at sales activities, okay? And we have to really see how that can help, how we can help ourselves. And that is really about research and analytics, marketing and communication, and absolutely conversion is king. So we will see then that by spending our time here in gathering this information and getting our value proposition and our offering really, really right, we then will be able to power the right marketing and communications. And then when the phone rings, we're ready to convert, or when the booking comes in online. So really focusing from a sales perspective on these three areas are where you're going to be winning. So what does that look like? Well, definitely in terms of conversion, it's about demonstrating unstinting customer service. And that comes back to both having flexibility where people make bookings, being very open and honest and responsive to customers' needs when they call you, and leveraging that fantastic reputation that Kerry has. And that your businesses have already. Those of you who have people who are going out and doing traditional sales, we really have to redeploy their efforts and their focuses into gaining really good customer information, both your existing customer information and your target one, and using target customers and using that research to power what you're going to spend money and time on communicating and how you're going to get to those customers. And then you're probably going to need to think about investment in some areas. And the great thing is that there's so much training and upskilling happening for little or no cost. And that could be an area like data analytics or communication and marketing. And that might be something to think about doing now if you feel that there is a gap. So we're just finishing up here, and I'm conscious of time. I won't delay too much longer, but just to think about how to get your message out. And I suppose there's a couple of good tips to bear in mind. Okay, good communication is about using simple language. Do you know, if we think about any of the really excellent political campaigns that we've seen go, Make America Great, get Brexit done. Winston Churchill used to say this, that it's really important to use simple language in our communications, particularly when we're there at that lower levels of the need hierarchy. Simple communications and language that resonates. We need to, as Una said, the hard sell is definitely on pause, so we need to really spend our time meeting those needs and expectations. It's going to be really important that you continue to temperature check the market. People are going to feel that, sentiment is going to move on a whim. We're going to have to be very tuned in to the temperature of the market, and you have to be ready to actually roll back, and move forward in a sort of very responsive way. So just be aware of that. Really, I would really encourage people to use video. I think it would be absolutely essential in showing as well as telling people how we're approaching our business offering and how we're approaching our product. So really, if there's anything you can do that you can put up on video, you can show people how you're managing their health and safety, you can show them how you're managing your business to meet their needs. It's going to be really important. Being on is unfortunately one of the byproducts of this pandemic, because everyone is online constantly. So if you can make it easy to be reached, that would be great. If you haven't thought about it before, you might think about Facebook messaging or a messenger app on your website or on your Facebook pages. Whatever way, I see and I've seen some great data about interaction happening that way from a consumer perspective. It's really important to keep your face on your business and being visible online or offline. It's never been more important. So do remember to keep that face out there and be clear in your offering. But again, flexibility, as Una said at the very beginning, is key here. So it's really important to try things, and if they don't work, then you can change it. So don't feel that you're stuck on a path that has to go forward. So finally, the reality, we're all going to write lovely plans, but the reality is something different. We're definitely going to have dips and we're going to have peaks, and we're on a change curve, and we're coming out of that sort of denial space and into that area where we're accepting, and we're now developing and exploring new ideas, and that's really important. That we recognise that it is a curve, and that we will likely move up and down that. So be kind to yourselves above all, because we're all trying to figure this out at the moment. So some final takeaways, just if you're going to screenshot any slide that might help you, to remember to strategize across multiple timescales, products, and segments. Definitely layer your communication strategy over that, specific to each segment, product, and timeline. Remember at the very front of your everything you're doing, put your customer needs at the center, and use your value messages based off what those needs are. And finally, adapting your sales approach is going to be, it's 101, it's what we all have to do. And finally, we're going to get our message out, but remember to remain nimble, because we may need to change it as we go. So I think that brings us to the end of what we were going to say, Una and I. And really what's left for us is we're going to take some questions if there are any. And finally, just to say thank you for having us, and stay well. And we look forward so much to seeing you on the other side of this.
Thank you very much, Helen and Una, for a fantastic presentation. Paul, do you want to come in there?
No, well done, girls. Thank you. Yeah,
Thank
super.
you.
I thought
thank
you
you.
just had to turn up at the door. Clearly not.
I'm sorry?
I thought you just had to turn up at the door of the hotel, but clearly not.
No.
Not quite. Not quite.
We wish.
Are there any questions in?
So if there's any members and attendees that would like to ask a question, just please put up your hand or put it into the question bar, and I'll leave you in. Just two comments quickly from Meg in the Killarney Golf Club. Thank you for the wonderful presentation, Una, and thanks, Helen. Fantastic stuff. So I'm just checking to see if there are members that have put up their hands. Please feel free, and I can patch you in to ask Una or Helen a question. I think you've covered a lot. No question arising at this moment in time.
Okay.
So you've obviously covered this very, very well. I see
Answers.
a good number of people.
All right.
Sorry now, looks like my screen is after freezing.
Okay.
So Tom Randall's there now. I leave you in, Tom. You should be. Are you there, Tom?
You got him in?
No, not coming in. So we've Eileen. No questions, thank you. Helen. It's good when you have everybody is very happy. They have no questions.
Super.
I suppose it's.
Well, you know where to find us if you need us.
Yeah, absolutely.
The important thing to take out of this, Una and Helen, and especially from, and I think it's very poignant in your last diagram, this is going to be bumps on the road as we open back up, and we're all learning the difficulties and living with this virus until probably there's a vaccine, and the peaks and the challenges that are going to be there. So I think it's important that people just seek the advice they need if they have any questions. And I suppose the biggest thing in relation to showing that people are being responsible as it in the new landscape that's there is also a very unique selling point, I think, for businesses. I think, hold on now, we've just won. I'll just leave Meg in there now, actually. Sorry. Now, Meg, we can hear you there.
We got her?
Should be.
It's not our tech day.
That's why I don't do this.
Can you hear us, Meg? No.
No.
Sorry, no. Can you type it into the question bar, Megan? We'll be able to ask Helen or Una or both. Okay, so I have a question here now from Tom. Can Helen recommend any software for our website to facilitate customer queries?
To facilitate customer queries, yeah. So it's very simple. The simplest one to put in is actually a Facebook plugin. That's the one I believe is most compatible. But there's a number, depending on, I can't remember, Tom, who powers your website. But there's different chatbots they're very simple to add. You can talk to your website provider and they'll tell you what you can plug into your website. There's a couple of things with the messenger piece. What I would recommend is you have to bear in mind that you need to have someone who's able and on to be able to answer them. That's the first thing to remember. The second thing to bear in mind is that it's useful to keep a track of all of the questions that you're asked, particularly over the first sort of week or two, because what you might be finding is that there's information that isn't on your website that you could actually just populate on your website to negate that question piece. So it's really important for that because it can really help you with your content in your website and making it very relevant. And on that, it's probably worthwhile making it front and center for those of you who haven't done it yet to put a COVID policy on your website. That's really easy for people to see what you're doing in your business to support your customers' needs. So that's the other thing with that, but your website provider will tell you what plugin. I know Facebook Messenger, a number of people are using Facebook Messenger because it links in with your social media as well. So hopefully that will help, but definitely talk to your website provider, they'll be able to help you as well.
Okay, a question for Una. Is there an opportunity to build own brand versus OTA, or is it just wishful thinking?
No, it's not wishful thinking. I think, I think that the relationship between the customer and hotels is going to change, because I think that relationship is going to have to strengthen more, because it's going to be based so much more on trust and on safety concerns, and their decision around purchase is going to be based so much more on safety concerns. So I think that actually there's probably an opportunity here to actually build brand. I think we're always going to have to use OTAs. I don't see the demise of them yet, and not in this, even in this pandemic. But I think that you have an opportunity to build really nice customer relationships through your own brand website and through your own social messaging that brings people back to your brand website. And as Helen said, putting up a COVID page and being very clear that when you open, you have your cleaning protocols on site, all of those things that build trust and confidence from a consumer point of view will pay dividends for your business in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I concur entirely.
Okay, and Meg has her question here now. So she just wanted to know what the speakers think about destination marketing, as we need to combine resources and collaborate more given this new ecosystem.
Yeah, I think, well, I'll just start that, and then I know Helen, I suppose the important thing is that, people buy destinations before they buy hotels, actually. So really important that at a destination level, that everybody, say, within the broader Kerry area is working closely together and collaborating and going, as I was saying earlier, sharing that top level information about feeder markets. Some places might have more resources than others, but that it's shared right across the destination supplier platform around hospitality, so that everyone can share in that information and really support kind of destination marketing. But Helen? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree entirely. And actually, if you want to have a look at a nice destination, it's doing a good job of destination marketing at the moment, is Portugal. So have a look at them and have a look at their recent video. They have a gorgeous video about coming back to visit. They do really well. And Spain, did you say was another one?
No, it's called Clean and Safe. Clean and Safe, I think, is their marketing campaign for Portugal. Yeah.
So I think really, if you can harness the great, good, amazing reputation that you have in Kerry and use that as a platform to communicate when people can travel again, I think there's great power in that. I think so. Great question, and yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think
that's great.
Yeah,
I think that's the important point to make. There's a lot of work in the background in relation to Killarney and Kerry destination marketing over the coming weeks. So I think that's a very important point. Just a final thank you so much for the presentation, very insightful from Sean. So Paul, I leave it over to you. That is us wrapped up here.
That's great. Thanks for that, Niall. And Helen and Una, thanks so much. That was very, very good indeed. And even us humble retailers have learned something today. So it's clearly...
it can be used anywhere.
There you go.
Same principle apply.
You can apply it to anything, obviously. So thanks again for that.
Yeah.
Much obliged. Just for...
That's all. And
That's great.
thank you for the opportunity.
No problem.
Great to be here. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks.
Bye,
just for
everyone.
our listeners now, for just to remember, you need to check out of this one and open up the link for Sarah's presentation. So it's a separate link. So if we clock out of this one, and we'll be back with you in a few minutes with Sarah Tracy. Thanks very much.